Well, we made it. The top 3. You asked for it, I delivered. You asked me to rank all the Doctors, all 13 of the Doctors, in order from worst to best. Guess what? There isn't a worst as far as I'm concerned. I like them all. This is my opinion. It is correct, as is yours. A few things I want to draw on. A few of you have disliked some of the previous videos because you don't agree with my opinion. It's my opinion. You chose to watch it. Get over yourselves. And besides, activity, boost the stats. Nice. And secondly, the Watcher does not count as a Doctor. A lot of you are arguing about it. Yes, the Watcher is like the next incarnation in the waiting, but he's not an incarnation. The Watcher didn't have adventures. The Watcher didn't have a life cycle. Unless you want to regale yourself and your children in the future of the tales of your favourite Doctor, the white sticky one who stood by a fence near a motorway and stared at Tom Baker for a bit. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? My third favourite Doctor is the 11th Doctor. Tiny little Matthew with his oodles of energy. That's right, Matt Smith, the youngest actor to take on the role, which got the public in some kind of weird frenzy back in 2009. It was January 2009, I think it was announced in a Doctor Who Confidential one-off special, who the next actor would be. People were really confused, they're like, he's way too young. And those who'd lived through the 80s were like, we had the same reaction when Peter Davison was announced, and that turned out alright. But yes, the 11th Doctor is very high up on my list, simply because he nailed it very, very quickly. A lot of that was to do with the relaunch of Doctor Who in 2010, when Stephen Moffat took over as showrunner. There was a definite tonal shift. At the same time, that first series is very much in the same style as what Russell T Davies and his team had done for the previous 5 years, albeit with a fairy tale theme for that year. It was a little more fantastical, a little more fantasy, rather than science fiction. And it worked really well for that year especially. And Matt Smith was a different Doctor, very much so from David Tennant. They didn't try to copy the formula, which, you know, you couldn't exactly blame them if they wanted to do that. It was playing it safe after David had been such a big breakout incarnation. You know, he'd become very much part of the zeitgeist. He was the 21st century closest analogue comparison to Tom Baker's Doctor. But Matt was his own thing. Unlike most of the Doctors in his first series, he's a little different than when he refines it and perfects what he's doing later on. But here's where things get a little complicated. Because Matt's best series is undoubtedly, again, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion, but is undoubtedly Series 5. Because as a whole, that series works a lot better than 6 and 7 and the specials that surround them. But he gets better at playing the role in Series 6 and 7. Which isn't to say he's bad in Series 5, he's certainly not, but his Doctor develops and his performance refines. Series 5, though, just as a package, is fantastic. If I ever want to introduce somebody to the show, and they're like, oh, I just want to watch like one, sort of see what it's like, I usually recommend Rose, because obviously that was a really good starting point for new viewers. But if they're like, oh, I don't know, like sometimes you do get people who go like, oh, it looks a little old. I'm like, 2005, it's not that long ago, don't make me feel old. But if they do that, I always say the 11th Hour is a really nice place to start. If you enjoy it, go back again. But 11th Hour is a really solid, in fact, it's joint first place for my favourite post-regeneration story for a Doctor. So the story of that Doctor's first adventure. 11th Hour is fantastic storytelling. I just adore Matt's energy. Here's the thing with Series 6 and 7, the scripts do get weaker for you know, my money. They're not as solid and things start to get looser and it all becomes more about we want to leave the audience with interesting questions that they want answering rather than we want to tell a story and answer questions. And that's a big problem that I have with that chunk of the era. But Matt is always a highlight. He can take a bad script and still make himself something worth watching. Take, for example, Nightmare in Silver. Not Neil Gaiman's finest piece of work, but Matt's performance as the Doctor and Mr. Clever is a joy to watch. It's absolutely brilliant. The Ganga two-parter in Series 6, again, some really good stuff, but not brilliant. Yet, the Doctor and his Ganga duplicate, and what Matt is doing with the performance of both of them, and then the switcheroo later, and then you look back and you sort of see how he was playing it, is excellent. Like, he raises the bar. Like, if a script is not great, he makes the experience of watching the overall story a lot better just because of his performance and his take on it. A lot of his enthusiasm, especially in his first two series, from making the show, the people he's working with, feeds into the episodes as well. So there's this sense of joy and, you know, just like camaraderie when you're watching him and Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill work together, which I feel disappeared when they left and Jenna Coleman came in. There's not that same buzz, that same energy. And it's very evident when you watch the behind the scenes. Obviously, there was more behind the scenes earlier in his tenure when we started Confidential and things like that. But if you watch the behind the scenes footage, those three are always having a laugh. They're always making each other piss themselves with laughter. And it translates on screen. So even though I have big problems with Amy's character and parts of Rory's character as their stories go on, I always enjoy watching those three actors together because they have such a great chemistry that, you know, if it's on TV, if I'm flicking through channels and there's, you know, Dr. Amy and Rory, I'm like, oh cool, sit down, start watching. Matt, of course, was a fantastic place for us to be when it came to the 50th anniversary celebration, Day of the Doctors. You've got a movie-length episode that's going to be watched by loads of people around the world. People who'd never even seen it would be like, oh, I'm curious, what is this thing that everyone's excited about? And what better leading man to have than Matt? Of course, yeah, you get the cherry on top of David popping back, and you get the excellent John Hurt into the mix, but this guy's energy, this guy's enthusiasm, and the fact that he looks damn good in the Victorian wear made sure that he was the perfect leading guy for that story. I couldn't have been happier with him being the Doctor at that moment. Though I think his greatest attribute as an actor and as his take on the Doctor is him elevating material and particularly being the core of it, the thing that you still want to watch even if you're put off by other aspects of it. He also does have some excellent episodes himself. The ones that I always find myself returning to if I choose to box set are The God Complex. I have a lot of fun with that one. Spooky Hotel, Room Full of Ventriloquist Dummies, What's Not to Love. I really, really like 11th Hour. It's my second favourite post-regeneration story. Vincent and the Doctor, excellent. Most of The Power of Three until the end. It's just fun to watch him in that setting. I have a soft spot for what's the Western one? Oh, what's the one set in the Old West? A Town Called Mercy. Again, not amazing, but just watching him in that setting is joyous to behold. Day of the Doctor obviously is a highlight of his era as well. And I really like A Christmas Carol. I know it's not a lot of people's favourite, but it's just down to watching Matt. His joy is infectious to behold. So it's really scary and shaky when he suddenly does go into these rage-filled moments, that little glimpse in A Good Man Goes to War and such, because you're like, no, you're not capable of this. You're the goofy, silly giraffe man. You're that guy. Like, what's going on? And again, one of my favourite series finales, weirdly, is the Pandorica Opens of The Big Bang. In retrospect, not so much, because there are too many open questions that still don't get resolved, and it's really stupid. Seriously, sit down and plot out on paper what you think the Silence's story arc was from Series 5 to Series 7. Just try. There is no thought behind it whatsoever. But that finale is excellent because it's a mix of Stephen Moffat at his, I think, most focused and daring in a good way, because there was a payoff where the first part is every enemy ever comes together to go against him and this mystery that the series is building to, and you think, oh my god, part 2, how are they going to resolve this? And part 2 sweeps the rug out from under your feet, and suddenly it's an intimate story with a small group of characters in a museum, and it works so well. And watching Matt going back through his own timeline, the Doctor going back through his own timeline, and talking at Amy's bedside and stuff, it's the sweetest. It's just, I mean, this guy. So the 11th Doctor is my third favourite Doctor, not necessarily because of his adventures, but because of him and his performance and his personality. If you agree or disagree, it's all good. Let me know down below. What are your favourite 11th Doctor stories, if you had to pick them? And I will see you tomorrow for the Doctor who is in second place. Spoiler alert, it's not the Watcher. He's in first.